quick thank you to our sponsors for making this podcast possible. They keep this show free to listen to. Does connective parenting feel confusing? What do I do in this situation? How do I handle that issue? Let me help you make more sense of it all in my 30-day challenge. We meet for 4 weeks of group coaching, and you get access to all of the Peace in Parenting online materials, my entire Connected Parent Mastermind. Plus, we give you access to our school community. I help you get more connected and jumpstart your parenting in this 30-day challenge. So go to the show notes and sign up, and I'll see you there. Hi, I'm Michelle, a mother of 2 teens. 13 years ago, I traded in punishments and rewards for connection. Now I prioritize relationship over behaviors, utilize play as a parenting tool, and set limits with empathy instead of consequences. Each week, I share my journey and interview clients, experts, and followers. Thanks for joining me on the Peace in Parenting podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Peace in Parenting podcast. I'm Michelle, and I have a lovely guest today, Taryn, who is one of our Peace in Parenting coaches. Welcome to the show, Taryn. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, it's so lovely. I wanted to have you on to talk about your own personal journey into connected parenting. And perhaps you can tell us, where were you, before you found this methodology?
Yeah. So I would say I found Hand in Hand in 2013, a little bit after the birth of my second child. So I have 2 kids. My daughter, Eden, is turning 15 this summer, and my son, Bodhi, is turning 12 this summer. And I would say that before I had my second kid, I felt like really confident as a parent. It was something I knew my entire life that I wanted to be a mom. I was one of those kids that just like dreamed of being a mom, felt like I'd be a good mom. It was all I wanted to do was raise my own kids. And it started off like pretty well. I feel like when I had my first, it was after we got over kind of a rough, like early postpartum, really hard, like intro to breastfeeding. Those first few months were very rough. I feel like once we got over that, it was pretty easy. She was inherently like a go with the flow kind of kid, just pretty cooperative, excited to be here, excited to be alive, just like made it fun. We were having a blast. and then my son was born almost exactly 3 years later. And everything kind of just flip-flopped. Like everything that I knew about parenting was turned upside down. Everything that was easy was, suddenly hard. And I feel like I couldn't see it at the time, but when I reflect back, my older one, and I were just becoming more and more disconnected. And it was really hard to imagine that was happening because I was home full time at the time. I was spending all my time with her. I thought I was, connected to her. I thought we were doing well. She was really, and still is, like a really independent, spirited kid. So she would play by herself. She would go out with her dad and adventure out in the world while I was home with the baby. And I was like, she's living her best life. Like, she's great. We got this made. And then really slowly but surely, we were just becoming more and more disconnected. I was spending more and more time with the baby, less time with her because I felt like she didn't need it. She was doing so great. She was thriving. And then my biggest sort of light bulb moment that I can recall was probably like 6 or 7 months in. She was out of diapers for over a year at that point. And she just like looked at me from across the room. I remember it so clearly, like the things that get blurry over time. This I remember very, very clearly. We just like locked eyes and she just started peeing everywhere while staring at me and just like holding the stare.
Oh, that's a good it's a message, right?
It was a message and I got it. Like it was very clear, it wasn't just like, what did she do or what's wrong? I was like, oh no, like this is a very clear, signal to me. So right around that time, someone sent me a Patty Whitfler article. So that was my sort of introduction to hand-in-hand parenting and this idea of connected parenting, which, before I knew about it, I would have said that I was a super connected parent. I felt really connected to my kid and my kids.
I think that's so interesting you say that because I thought that too. And a lot of people they'll say, well, what do you think the problem is? I will say, well, maybe the problem's connection. And they're like, oh, no, 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 no. I have a deeply connected relationship with my child. I am with them all the time. I constantly connect. And I think that's so true, right? We do have these connected relationships and we are constantly connecting. But connection it's a complex beast, right? It can be very many, many facets to it and very specific ways in which kids feel connected that we don't necessarily feel the same way, right? They get their connection in different ways. So I think that's such a poignant thought is that, yeah, I'm connected to my kid. How can they pee on the floor? Like, I'm connected to them. What are you talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And then it just sort of like opened up this whole world for me of, oh my goodness, I missed this. We were sort of, just distancing ourselves a little bit at a time, more and more as each day would pass. And I missed it. But then I knew about it. And then, I, around that time also, that was just the beginning of basically what would turn into her starting to turn into almost like a different kid. Like she seemed like a different person to me. She became really aggressive towards her younger brother. She would have never like hit or pushed or done anything like that before. And suddenly, he took a toy, she was knocking him over. And then suddenly I turned into a version of myself that I didn't recognize. I was like yelling and resenting her. And so the divide was deepening. And, I just feel really lucky in retrospect that I found Hand in Hand right around that time because I dove in really hard.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's something I can do about this. Like, because I really was feeling very scary and kind of hopeless at the time.
Well, it's hard to see our kids display these behaviors, especially even if they are in character, like seeing your kid seeing one child hurt the other child, that is enough to push a parent deeply over the edge, right? We don't want to see our babies hurting each other. And then I know I did, you and I have a very, very, very similar story. I would demonize Esme. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, how could you treat your sister like that? She's your sister. And then it was like this whole cuckoo cycle we got into.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that always, whenever I hear you talk about your early days, it definitely sounds very familiar to me. And poor thing, I mean, looking back, yeah, it was almost as if I wasn't, like I was forgetting that she also was my little baby. Because at 3 years old, they're still babies.
Yeah, and that's the same thing. You were so lucky and smart that you got in right away when she was 3. I waited another 2 years of that cycle before I found any help. And I was like, we were in a really bad place by the end.
Yeah. I do. I feel lucky that I found it when I did. And yet, it's not a one and done kind of thing.
Oh, no.
There are so many cycles of it and so many ages and stages. And that's why I just feel so grateful that I have this information, that I have the tools, that I've been practicing it for as long as I have, but also like there are always new adventures and there are always ways to like bring them out and, refresh and go back to the basics,
Yeah, I think I had to do that when Esme turned 12. I talk about it a lot, but that I was like, nope, not doing connection now. We're all done with that. That was fun, wasn't it? We're done. Now we're going to punishments, everybody. It's not happening. You will not talk to me like that. And I had to really recalibrate. And I remember calling Kirsten Nodelson and saying, because she's a trainer, and saying to her, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And she's like, oh, yes, you are. I was like, oh, no, I'm not. And she had to talk me off the ledge, literally, 10 years or 8 years into it. I still was questioning it because I thought, am I going to get great kids in the end? Am I going to get kids who won't be saying these sassy things right to my face? Because you get very confused. You can get confused even after years of doing this work.
Yeah. And I think it's totally normal to think like, oh, but I'm doing all these things. They're automatically going to be like amazing and it's going to be easy. And it just really isn't. Isn't that way?
No. It's almost sometimes worse, I think, because they feel so safe to be who they are with us because we're the safest place that we get the deepest dysregulation, right? And that's a hard, paradigm to come to terms with, that you just might get some really off track behaviors and that's normal.
Yeah. And that's, so I read that article. I ended up taking the starter course, the 6-week course. I like loaded up on the tools. I started practicing them. I dove in hard. I was like, I'm on this now. And it was hard, but I did feel like a little bit of a boost of confidence, I would say, and just like handling the situation and not just totally run over by it, run over by my 3-year-old and infant. And yeah, so I did that 6-week course. I started noticing little changes like right
Yep.
away. I really,
Cooperation.
yeah. And it was a whole shift in perspective. It went from like her being the problem and her being like this new monster child to me being able to see that she was struggling and that she needed my help in a different kind of way. And that definitely shifted things, and the vibe. And she definitely, we struggled with sibling rivalry for a while. It took
Yep.
me, quite some time to really like understand how to use the tools effectively, and that was probably like the last thing that I saw a turnaround with. And honestly, they've struggled with sibling rivalry on and off for years, but they're also best friends, which I don't think I ever could have imagined at that time.
Isn't that, yeah, I think so too. We've struggled with sibling rivalry on and off, and we've gone through years of amazing and then years of, and I think it's with every stage, right? Like Pia didn't have a voice early on. And so when Esme started to change, Pia was fine with it. And she never really asserted herself when she wanted, she let Esme run the show. And as soon as Pia found her voice and was decided that she didn't want Esme running the show anymore, we had some like, we had some feelings around that. So then we went through years of that. And then we went through years of Pia thinking Esme was just like annoying, right? Because she's like a different personality and she just thought she was annoying. And now they're like, they're friends, like in a really like do stuff together, like go to the mall together, like do things together. It's so cute.
Yeah, my kids are at the neighborhood pool right now. And I just spoke with Eden right before this. And I was like, is Bodhi okay? He doesn't have a phone yet. And she was like, yeah, he's hanging out with me and my friends. And I was like, what?
So
She's
cute.
I know. So, yeah, but, so I credit, I credit connected parenting.
I do too. I really do. It helped me see that. And I talk about this in the sibling podcast a lot, that, there doesn't need to be a winner and a loser in a sibling fight. That really is like, and I always was trying to pick somebody, and that was so basic, but it took me a long time to like put it into play.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to see it before you know.
I know. We're taking a break to hear from our sponsor so I can bring this podcast to you free of charge. You know what I don't miss at all? The vicious week before my period. I always used to feel like I was walking in quicksand and craving the most unhealthy of foods. My sleep was always off and my moods were unpredictable. Now it's easier to manage PMS with Estro Control. Happy Mammoth, the company that created Hormone Harmony, is dedicated to making women's lives easier. And that means using only science-backed ingredients that have been proven to work for women. They make no compromise when it comes to quality, and it shows. And the biggest benefit, feeling like myself again. That's what women mention over and over in their reviews, and there are over 14,000 reviews of Hormone Harmony. For a limited time, you can get 15% off the entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use code PEACE at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use the code PEACE for 15% off today.
My book, Unpunished, is finally here. It is my journey into connected parenting, the idea of perfection and how it nearly took me down as a mom. I give you my best thinking around how to be a connected parent and the insights that I've discovered over the last 12 years of this incredible journey. I'm giving my book away for free, plus shipping and handling. So go to unpunished.com and get yours today. We're shipping domestically and we're also shipping internationally.
Okay, let's get back to the show. So tell me about Peace and Parenting. What do you like about your Thursday class? Because you do a Thursday class every week, and also like your one-on-one clients. What feeds you in this realm?
Yeah, well, I'll back up a little. I'm loving my time here with Peace and Parenting. I'm so honored to be part of the team. It's an incredible team of coaches, obviously with you at the helm, Michelle.
Thank you.
And I just love the community. There's so much support. I am a deep believer in the fact that parents need support. we're not really supposed to do this by ourselves. There is so much support in this community, in the group calls and the one-on-ones in the school community, various online platforms. There's just like so many places to turn for support. And I love that I get to be part of that as a parent and as a coach. I'm really loving. So I was actually in like the birth and postpartum support space for many years. I am a former doula, and that's actually how I got my start with working in the coaching world, was in these new mom support and education groups before I did my hand-in-hand year-long certification. So I was really working with parents of much younger kids. And one of the things that I'm loving the most right now is that all the clients I'm working with, there's just such an age range. And it's beautiful to see how the tools can really be used at every age and stage. It's like, it looks different, but it's same foundation, really.
Totally. I think that's what the beautiful thing is. People will say, well, like, I don't know if I want to be in a class with people who have toddlers because I have an 11-year-old. And I'm like, just you wait. You have the same problems. They just look a little bit different. And, like the tool of play, people will also say, oh, I don't think play is for my teenagers. And I'm like, oh, but it is. It very much is for your teenager.
Yeah, it looks a little different. I was just on with someone earlier, a one-on-one client, who was saying how much easier it is to have special time with her 4-year-old versus her 9-year-old. And we kind of uncovered a little bit that it's more about just finding the path in. And sometimes it looks different than you think it might. Like I recently shared on one of my group calls that my son loves sport night and I kind of can't stand it. And it was like this thing that was between us. And then I ended up flipping it and using it as a way to get into, to get more connected with him.
Yeah,
I started
that's me
playing it with him.
That's so good.
Yeah, I'm so bad at it. He has to like tell me how to do it, and he makes fun of me. He laughs that I I try to use all the like terminology and stuff, and it cracks him up. And it's just it just looks different, but it's still play.
That's so sweet. As Pia used to make me watch, not so much anymore, Norris Nuts and Dance Moms.
Oh, okay.
And I would be like, oh my God, I cannot take either of those. They drive me insane. And I would be like, sure, I'll watch another one of Dance Moms. Abby Lee's my favorite. Love her. She's real top notch, And I'm like, oh boy. And she'll every once in a while be like, Mom, you want to watch Norris Nuts? It's like she almost liked making me do it. Like she had control. She's like, wants me to, which was so lovely because it gave her so much control. But
yeah, I was going to say, like in the group calls, like in the Thursday call, I mean, different people come and go, but I would say there's, a parent of adult kids in there, like young adult kids, teenage into like early 20s. And then also a parent of like a 2-year-old in there, and everything in between. I just think it's so fascinating and beautiful to see the way they can still show up and support each other and learn from it and share how they're practicing the tools in their own homes and what's working and what's not. And it's just,
and a parent of a 2-year-old and the parent of the 20-year-old still can be dealing with almost the same thing. Like, is it parent shame? Is it from your own childhood? Like, are you dealing with judgment? Like, all those things happen no matter who you are and what you're doing as a parent. Yeah. So good. So good.
That was one of my favorite things about the year-long certification program, was just like the deep dive into self that it makes you do. That it's like, I was like, oh, I'm doing this because I need more certifications to feel more, confident in supporting these parents of babies and toddlers as they get older. And it was such a deep dive into myself and who I am as a person and as a mom. And I think that is so, clearly so much a part of this work is we're just constantly connecting dots to where where the hard parts come from, where the triggers stem from. And I find that fascinating as well.
I think that's what's good about coaching too, is that, if you're playing in a basketball game or like whatever, a baseball game, you're just worried about hitting the ball and getting to first base, right? But if I'm in the bleachers and I can see like, oh, the second baseman's creeping in, you better be careful. You can't steal second. Like, the coach can see the bigger picture and help you see your blind spots, I guess it is, in parenting, so that you can say, oh, but what about this? This looks like it could be a potential blind spot for you. Like, what do you think? And that's always so helpful. Yeah. Yeah. And the year-long certification for me too. Taryn and I were in the same certification cohort. And I thought too, I was going like, oh, I'm going to go get like a teaching credential, right? They're going to give me books and tell me how to teach it. But what they really did was make you the client. And
Yeah.
when you become the client, you like really learn about what you want someone else's client journey to look like.
Yeah.
So lovely. If anyone's out there and wants to be a coach, a couple of things. Hand in Hand Parenting has made amazing program. It's almost a year long. And also Peace and Parenting, we always are looking for coaches because we're always growing and needing more people. Yeah. Okay, Taryn, anything else? If you were going to give any advice to someone who was thinking about doing this work or is in the middle of doing this work, what would you say to them?
Just stay the course, because it is, it's not linear. It's, we've touched on that a little bit, but it's definitely a journey. And I think even after you've been, practicing this way of parenting and using these tools for years and years and years, you hit rough patches all the time, and you always have to go back in. You always have to dig deeper, and it's not a reflection on whether or not you're a good parent. And I think sometimes I notice that happens for myself and also for the parents that I work with, that like they hit a rough patch and it's just like, oh, maybe this isn't working. And just to really trust the process and that it really, it is working. And also like we're all humans and we all have really hard times. And, but to be able to move through it, with connection is a beautiful thing.
Yes. We love connection. So good.
Connection junkies.
Right? Give me some more. Thank you, Taryn, for joining us. I really do appreciate you sharing your story. And thank you, everybody who came and listened to the Peace and Parenting podcast. And we will see you next time. Thank you.
Bye.
America. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. At Grand Canyon University, we believe in equal opportunity, and the American dream starts with purpose. To serve others in ways that promote human flourishing and create a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.